there is an island here. Like, what? What's up, guys? JOAKIM here, and welcome back to another video on my channel. Let's make a video about the eastern border of Sweden, which is also the western border of Finland. You might not think that this border is very interesting, and you're right. If you just look at the border like this, it doesn't look like much. It looks like a very small border, and it just goes like this in the middle of a river, and then actually two rivers, and then it just goes in the middle like this, and that's it. But if you do some research and if you zoom in, then you find some interesting stuff. So firstly, Sweden, if you didn't know, was Sweden and Finland back in the day for like 700 years, and then in 1809 we lost, I say we because I'm Swedish, but Sweden lost Finland, or actually not all of this was Finland back then. So yeah, we lost the eastern half of Sweden, that's more accurate to say, to Russia. And also the Åland Islands, as you can see here, those little islands there. And the history of the border goes something like this, that Russia and Sweden, they negotiated, and the Swedes wanted the border to go here along the Kemi River. Finland was a kind of a newish term, and this area basically was called Eastern Land or Eastland, like Österland. And then we had Norrland, which is the northern land, and so the natural border for those regions went along this river. The Russians, they wanted the river to go along the Kalix River, because also Russia is so vast because they are known to have buffer zones. Like the actual Russia is around here, Moscow and St. Petersburg. This is Russia, and all this is just to protect this populated area, more or less. And this is how they have been thinking and acting for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they wanted to have as much room here as possible to be able to defend this, or protect this peninsula, the Kolahalvön, as we say in Swedish. So we had the Russians wanting to have the national border along the Kalix River, the Swedes along the Kemi River, and in the end the border goes more or less straight through old Sweden, which gives us the modern Sweden on the western side and Finland on the eastern side. And there is actually a funny anecdote how this came to be, because the Swedish diplomat Kurt von Steding, he was the Swedish negotiator and also kind of like a personal friend of Alexander, the emperor of Russia at that time. And he got sick, and the Russians, they didn't want to delay the negotiations further, and Steding got the best treatment, the best Russian doctors and medicine, because they were kind of personal friends, and this was a negotiation between the countries and not between the men. So I guess Alexander got a stroke of empathy or sympathy, so he just took a pen and drew this border in the middle of the country instead. And this means that Sweden randomly became larger, I guess. And you can actually see this in the actual peace treaty between Sweden and Russia. And well, first of all, look at those titles. Karl med Guds nåde, Sveriges, Götes och Vendes konung, etc, 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 arvinge till Norge.
2 hours later.
Horst, etc, etc. I mean, this is the title. And then we have Alexander's title, which is Alexander den första, vår käreliske broder och frände kejsare och hela Rysslands självhärskare till Moskva, Kiev, Vladimir, Novgorod, tsar till Kazan, tsar till Astrakhan, tsar till Sibirien, tsar av Tauriska I can't even pronounce half of this. Herre till prästskap.
2 hours later.
Obdorien, Kondinien, Vitebsk, Mstislav och hela norra sidans påbjudare. Herre till Iverien, Kartalinien, Grusinien och Kabardinien.
1 eternity later.
Arvinge till Norge. Hertig till Schleswig, Holstein, Stoman och Dittmar, sen greve till Oldenburg och Delmenhorst, etc., etc. It seems like he had a few of those titles shared with the Swedish king, and here we can actually see the border between the Russian Empire and the Swedish kingdom defined. So it should go straight through the Sea of Åland, the Gulf of Bothnia, and also through these two rivers that I mentioned, Torne River and the Muonio River. This should be the border, and then we have it a bit more clearly defined. Now we come to our first interesting anomaly that we will find in Tornio, which is a Finnish city. Yes. And as you can see here, the border doesn't go through the river here, but it takes a turn, a weird turn, goes through a swamp or something, and straight through the road here to incorporate this whole island into Finland. And apparently, Alexander said that these people, the citizens of Tornio, they had sent him a letter that they would rather become Russians than Swedes, which is a bit weird because they had more business with the western side than with the eastern side, so they kind of suffered because of that, apparently. But they wanted to be Finns, and apparently they had their church here on Björkö. So I guess that might be the reason. I mean, the church was a big deal back then still, so maybe that's the reason why this island and this city should become part of Russia instead of Sweden. And this brings us to other interesting things in this river. So as you can see, we have the island here and an island here in Sweden and here in Finland, and these islands in the river were used for farming by farmers, obviously. And some of them lost the land they used to farm. So there's a treaty between Finland and Sweden, which is kind of interesting, that says that if they pay a fee, they are allowed to use that land to farm. So that's a special thing between Finland and Sweden. And also another interesting thing is, like, there is an island here. Like, what? This is interesting that we have a border there, because the border was more or less just defined as going in the middle between the two countries, and no one really knew where the border was, except the clearly defined islands are along here. But here it's like no one cared. So the border is just gonna go between Russia and Sweden. It doesn't really matter where, just in the middle. If it's an island there, we have no idea if it's exactly in the middle. So now in modern times, the border is like, as you can see, we can see the border now, and that it is a bit weird. And this brings us to a very interesting point on the border, which was always assumed to be Finland or Russia at the time. Here we can see it's this very small island just outside Åland. I think it belongs to Åland now, and if you didn't know, Åland is like it's like its own country, but it belongs to Finland. So we should cover that in another video maybe. So if you're not Finnish or Swedish, you might not know this, but here we have this tiny island. Here you can see there is this lighthouse. It's not used anymore, but actually this is a Finnish lighthouse, so it's not the Ålandian lighthouse, it's a Finnish lighthouse. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. So it was assumed that this was a Finnish island because it's also pretty far away from Sweden, but the actual border just went straight through this island because no one defined which country this island belonged to. And the curious thing here is that this lighthouse actually was in Sweden, a Finnish lighthouse that was in Sweden. So in the 70s they started to like, well, this is Sweden, whoops. So in 85 the border was actually redefined to go around the lighthouse, but Sweden didn't want to lose any. I mean, it was apparently it's less complicated to make a border that doesn't change the area of the actual country. It's I guess complicated stuff. I don't know, a country can't just give up 1 square meter of area or something. I don't know, it seems a bit ridiculous. If you know the actual reason for that, please let me know in the comments. But anyway, now the border goes like zigzag around the lighthouse, and this is the most interesting point of this border. It's just weird how it doesn't go straight through or around the island. It's cool. I love fun facts like this. It might not seem like much, but it's like a true fun fact. Like, just so interesting that we have an island here just smack in the middle of Finland and Sweden that is shared by the countries. No one really cares about it, really, because you barely go there, and no one really goes there. Yeah. It's a funny thing. And the last little fun fact I want to mention in this video, except, I mean, Åland is a living proof of a fun fact. It's a fun fact in its own. So we will definitely make a video about Åland. But regarding this island, now Sweden and Finland are in the European Union, and beside that, Sweden and Finland and Norway and Denmark and I guess Iceland too, we have a Nordic Union when it comes to borders. So we don't need visas and whatever. We can just use our we don't even need passports. We need our IDs and or our driver's license, I think, even to go to the other country. But on this island, before all that, you actually needed, obviously, a passport to go from this side to this side, or this side to this side. So in theory, the Finns that cared for the lighthouse, they needed to show their passport to go to the lighthouse in Sweden. This is all theoretical, because there was no control, like no border patrol or border control on this island, because there's nothing here anyway, and you can't go to Finland from this rock. So there was no actual border passport check. But it's a funny little, it's just a curious thing. It's just so funny and fun, both. Anyway, this was everything that I wanted to share with you in this video. Sweden and Finland, they share a boring looking border, but if you zoom in and if you do some research, then you will notice that there are a few peculiar things to mention, and I just love national borders and how they came to be, because yeah, that's just so peculiar. If you have another country's border in mind that you want me to take a look at, please let me know in the comments below. And if you want me to take a look at something Finnish or concerning the other Nordic countries or Sweden even, then let me know in the comments below. And we will see each other in the next video. Okay, let's have some lunch now. We'll see each other then. Bye. Hej då.